All right, good evening, everyone. You are listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Joining me once again is my good friend Bob Kudla from Trade Genius Academy. Bob, how are you?
I'm good, Red. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, considering everything that's going on. Well, listen, just for anybody who isn't familiar with you, give us a high-level overview of who you are and what Trade Genius does.
Yeah, so what we do at Trade Genius, we educate and we inform and we simplify how to trade the stock market and also the cryptocurrency market. So we developed over a number of years an algorithm and a methodology that looks at the buying pressure and selling pressure of different stocks and different sectors. And then we refine that down to buy points and sell points. And essentially what it does is it eliminates the human emotion and the human error that goes into making trades and takes the fear and greed out of it, and it puts you on a path where you're going to make money most every time you make a trade. And it's a very simple, straightforward program that we use, and it's easy for people to grasp. And we have a lot of people who are new that use it, and we have some very, very sophisticated traders that love it as well. And how we deploy it, Red, is that we have chat rooms that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're in those rooms when the markets are open. And then we also provide trade signals, and we teach you how to trade those signals so you can trade things on your own. And then we actually also provide you with the algorithm that you can load on software that you can actually see the buy and sell signals for yourself. So we give you a really complete package. And then what we've done always for your listeners is I put together some really nice packages, so that bundles that people can go ahead and take advantage of what we do, whether you're a beginner trader or if you're an experienced trader. So if you go ahead and take advantage of those by Saturday night, I pre-discounted those 65% off for your listeners. And if they just want to buy anything individually in there, they can just go and use the promo code April. I think you'll like what we do. And it's a lot of fun, and we'll help you grind your way to profitability.
All right, awesome. Well, as always, that information will be in the pinned comment in the description below, and your offer could not be more timely considering what's taken place recently in the stock market. I've had several friends who have had a lot of difficulty recently, a couple people who lost a lot of money. What is going on with the stock market? I mean, I think everyone's initial gut instinct is probably to try to salvage as much as they can. But is that the right thing to do? I mean, are we going to see a rebound? What is going on in the financial world?
Yeah, so from the start of this stock market pandemic, we went down 35%, and it went down really fast. It caught most everybody by surprise, so people couldn't just really jump off. Every day they thought maybe it would pop back up. Mm-hmm. But once we hit that floor, basically the feds came rushing in. We moved up 16% from there. Now, we're at a point now where we may roll over again, Red, on this, and go down and maybe even test those lows in terms of now the initial enthusiasm's out. We got these lockdowns and how long they're going to last. The money's not everybody's getting their loans. People aren't going to go back to work. So we're going to have some uncertainty for 3 or 4 months. What are the winners and losers? But coming out of July and August, we'll probably put a bottom in. And then all this money that's being printed and all these loans that are being backed, you'll probably see a surge in the stock market. And probably by the end of the year, you'll see a surge in the economy again.
That's good to know. What about this notice I just got today that the IMF and the World Bank are canceling the debt of countries that look like they might be in trouble? I mean, it seems to me that it must be most every country on the face of the earth. I can't imagine that anybody's going to be escaping from this.
Yeah, so now we get to the heart of why the virus that was a strong flu season became a worldwide pandemic. This was the covering that the elites and the globalists needed to clear off debt that they just simply could not get paid back. And the IMF and the World Bank and the G20 are pushing this pretty hard. You know, we do this about every 10 years or every 10 or 15 years anyway. So, which has been causing a lot of great difficulty around the world. And then in the US, we're solving it through what they call these repos that you probably heard about. So we have a domestic version of it too. And they're basically backing all the loans. And then around the world, they're forgiving the loans. You got to realize if those loans go bad, a lot of those loans come back onto the U.S. banks. So it's really just another bank bailout for the world bankers.
So is there any relief in sight for average everyday people? I mean, I think a lot of people are getting sick of seeing these, huge corporations, big banks, they get their balance sheets wiped out, but then just average everyday people, they're still on the hook for this stuff.
Yeah, so it's a barbell strategy here. So anybody that makes $30,000 a year or less is getting flooded with cash right now. Most everybody got their $1,200 check here today if you had direct deposit.
I didn't.
I use my daughter as an example. So she works and goes to college. She lost her job. So she got a $1,200 check. She's getting $200 a week now for, 8 or 12 weeks from the state. She's going to get a $600 a month check from the government for 4 months. So, it pays her, and I'm not picking on her, but it pays her not to work. So they covered that end of it, and they don't have to worry about health care because they can just go on the state medical plans. The wealthy were the first in the trough to get all the SBA loans and grants and bailouts. It's the middle class and the small business owner that we're going to have to see if they can survive until they get another tranche of stimulus coming their way. And that's the thing we got to worry about, because those are the people that actually employ the most people. So that's the area that I said will probably cause some uncertainty over the next 90 to 120 days. And that's why you're starting to see a lot of these small business owners start to agitate for ending the lockdown. We're like, hey, this thing has been oversold to us. This is another climate change kind of projection that never came through. And now you have to let us get back to work, or you're putting us out of business. And that's going to be far worse than potentially some people dying from this virus.
Yeah, I reported on this a bit yesterday on my two programs. In Lansing, Michigan, they've got something called Operation Gridlock, and people are just storming the streets. I think I misspoke and I said hundreds of thousands of people, but it's hundreds, if not thousands of people. But you see people are gathered in front of the Capitol building there in the capital city of Michigan. People are lining the streets. They've come from all across the state, and they're very upset with Governor Whitmer. I mean, she's put some ridiculous restrictions in place. You can't fish. You can't do home improvement. You can't buy seeds for your gardens. And most of all, you've got all of those mid-level businesses, small business owners, individuals, owner-operators, and they're the ones who are really suffering here. And just to briefly get back to that SBA stuff, I thought that I could potentially use this as an opportunity to hire some help myself and maybe keep some people employed. But because I didn't have anybody on the books prior to that, because I couldn't afford to, there's no money that's available for me to try and help out people who are out of work. So it's very frustrating. And I think a lot of people in many states, not just Michigan, are very angry about what's happening.
Yeah, and it's funny because we always expect the left to protest, but the politicians really pay attention when the normal people come out into the streets, and that's what happened here. And they did a very clever way. They blocked the roads by driving the speed limit, and then they weren't supposed to get out of their cars, but people were just too upset and poured out. In North Carolina, they tried to say it wasn't essential. In Germany, they're actually rioting against the police in some cities, saying, hey, this social distancing thing is a crock. And so I think you're starting to see that breaking down, because, look, the states can't even – the federal government is not going to bail out every state here. If that was the thinking, they're going to be sadly and sorely mistaken when they find out the way they make their money is through small business transaction taxes and the income that's derived from it. So I'm kind of glad this is happening. I was telling anybody who would listen to me, I said, if this thing goes too far past Easter, people are going to start agitating, because the governors are all equivocating on when they're going to release I'm sure a lot of governors are watching today saying, huh, okay, if this thing's starting in Michigan and then Texas and Florida say, hey, we're out of this thing. I heard today that Kansas is going to start opening up stores next week. Then it's going to crumble, and we're going to need to, because the small businesses are a backbone of our country, and it literally cause chaos.
Well, so what is this going to look like? I mean, do you think that the states are just going to individually start making the choice to open back up? I mean, I think a lot of people are very upset because they haven't been getting accurate information. We've got places like New York. We were told it was a war zone, but then we find out that there's some deception at play, not only by the mainstream media, but by, people claiming to be healthcare workers. We had Governor Cuomo saying that we had this need for all of this equipment and this assistance, and then it looks like it's not truly that way at all.
Yeah, you're being generous. They're out now committing fraud. So they said they needed 50,000 ICU beds. They have 5,000. They said they needed 50,000 ventilators. They're giving them away right now. They said 2.5 million people would die. Now we're down to 80,000, coming down to 40,000, probably coming down to 20,000. If you go into a hospital and you're coded for COVID, the federal government's paying your hospital bill. So you're incented to. Hey, you got an antibody in you with COVID, boom. And if you die and you had the antibody in you, boom, you're death from COVID. And so it's just been a full on, campaign here to make this disease into much more than it is. You got Stanford Medical, the university medical department coming out and saying this thing is no worse than the 2017, 2018 flu in terms of deaths. And you have Sweden and Brazil and some other countries saying, hey, if you did nothing, the death rate's not much different than what you guys did. So, because the thing was obviously much more contagious than anybody thought, and much less deadly than it's turning out to be. So, we just had a lot of misinformation. They don't give you a whole lot. They really try to control the narrative on this. But the post-action report on this thing is going to definitely validate and vindicate Trump, and people are going to really not trust the government going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't see much trust as it is, but I feel like the level of trust is going to be so much lower with anything that they tell us in the future. And part of me asks, is that by design? President Trump has been telling us one thing in the mainstream media, and the people, maybe standing against him inside his administration have been saying another. And the longer we go with this shutdown, the more we suffer, the more it shows that President Trump has been the only person who's been honest with us the entire time.
Yeah, and what I fear is that the next crisis is going to probably be for real, and people are going to not trust it. And so that's the thing about crying wolf all the time. My theory on the left is they're getting more and more shrill. The only thing left for them is worldwide famine and an asteroid coming our way. So
you're right.
I'm being serious. They couldn't move people on climate change, and then, hey, I know something. Let's tell them they're going to die next week from a virus.
Yeah.
And I think it's just sad that this is the world in which we're living in. And out here in California, it flattened right away. We have 40 million people out here, and it's just been non-existent.
Mm-hmm. Have you yourself met anyone who has been diagnosed or who had it and recovered?
Well, we know one person that has it, and that they're out of Hawaii, and they're fairly young and fairly healthy. So we haven't gotten any more report that it got worse, because they're daughter of a friend of ours. So I have to assume that they're probably recovering at home. They weren't in the hospital. But that's it. That's all I know.
What do you think the future of the American economy looks like? You said it's probably going to be before the end of the year, but what about once we get beyond that? Any predictions on how things are going to wrap up?
Yeah, I guess it'll depend on the election. But my view is that they took 2 or 3 years worth of trends and it collapsed it into 6 weeks. So I think if you're in commercial real estate or you own REITs and things like that, you're going to need to find another way to generate income. I think if you're in industries that have been offshored, I think you're going to see employment come back to that. I think you're going to see the whole phenomenon around working from home is probably there're going to be opportunities around that. And you and I are both familiar with that phenomenon. And then in airlines, I think you're going to see less work travel, but I think you're going to see leisure travel explode right back. I think people are the pent up demand to get away. And yeah, I think they're going to throw so much money at this red that I think they're going to be trying to tamp back inflation in a year or two. But they need to do it. They need to actually err on the side of caution. Even though we hate some of the things that they're doing, they caused the crisis, so they're going to have to provide the liquidity to get people through it. But I think it's going to change people's psyches a lot. I think the Starbucks economy is over, and we're going to go back to the diner economy. In terms of people are going to have jobs in factories and labs and things that make things versus making coffee, and things like that.
I mean, that's not bad. I think that's actually a really good thing. And I tend to agree. I mean, there's a ton of industrial jobs and manufacturing jobs that by necessity, we've been shown they can no longer be outsourced to different countries. And, obviously one country in particular, we need to be able to take care of ourselves. It's a valuable lesson, I think, if there's anything good that's going to come out of this. Now. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, and the thing is, the dollar and the United States, environment is still the best place for people to invest. So you're going to see other countries and wealth from other countries come into the United States because of our ability to, protect ourselves. We have enough energy resources, enough food resources. Our neighbors are relatively friendly, and so we don't, we're not sitting there trying to defend invasions, too much there. And so we're a stable place for people to make money. And I think you're going to see investments from around the world pour in as manufacturing pours in. And the thing that people don't realize, you get supply chains, you pop a factory back into a small town, there's a multiplier effect because there's a lot of support industries that have to support that new industry that came back in. So I think you're going to see opportunities in small town America, because these plants aren't going to move back into New York City or Chicago. They're going to move into small cities, small towns where the tax environment and the economic environment is going to be friendly to them.
Well, that's a good thing. Well, I guess one more thing. When we get to the full extent of this recovery, do you think the stock market is going to go back to where it was, or do you think it's going to be less, or do you think it's going to be more? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the low is going to be lower than people think. And then I think the high is going to be much higher than people think. I think we're going to get a slingshot. I think there's going to be a pretty good scare the children move here coming in the next couple months. And then I think the money that's going to be thrown at it will probably take us back to all-time highs again.
All right. Well, that's good. Hopefully people who have found themselves getting hosed with the lows that we've seen are going to be able to keep their money where it's at, so then they can get those gains back in the next couple of months. All right. Well, Bob, anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
No, I just, the only thing I always tell everybody is that, if you're in a situation where there's a wall in front of you, climb over the wall or go around it. Just don't sit there frozen. There's all the bad things that are out there. There's tremendous opportunities, and they're out there waiting for you. You may have to modify where you live or what you do, but there's a lot of opportunities. And I just want to give people courage and hope. This is not the end by any means. This is no Great Depression coming.
Okay. All right, good. Well, I hope that gives people some solace in this dark time. All right, guys. Well, thanks again, Bob, for joining me. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Red. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, it's Red Pill. Just one more thing. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to support this channel. If you'd like to see some ways that you can support the channel, you can always check the show notes in the pinned comment of this video below. Whether you like, whether you share, whether you make sure that your notifications are on, any way that you support this channel means so much to me. I could not be doing this without you, and I could not do it without your help. Without people like you, this channel would not exist. So thank you so much to everyone for all all of their many means of support. Don't forget to check out the merchandise store that is also in the pinned comment, and I will see you guys next time.